Hey Sapiens. So let me start this off with a disclaimer. I am not an economist. I grew up poor and never wanted to think about money. When you live paycheck to paycheck, financial freedom is not having to think about money. So I've been financially free since I've made $800 a month. I don't invest seriously, and I'm not even saving for retirement. I've heard people say, you won't understand the world until you understand economics. And I didn't want to believe that, but I picked up some economic principles, at least the basics, along the way. So let me point you to some great books that had a huge influence on me. Number one is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind by Yuval Noah Harari, and Why Information Grows by Cesar Hidalgo. So what's better, communism or capitalism? Neither. Communism implodes, capitalism explodes. I'm going to use the example of baking and distributing bread. People want bread. Sandwiches are a human need. But how do we decide the price of a loaf of bread under communism? The means of production are owned by the government. That means there's one bread-making factory that makes bread for the whole country. The government decides a fair and sustainable price for a loaf of bread. Let's say $1. If someone takes production into their own hands and they bake a loaf of bread and they sell it for $2 or 50 cents, then we burn down their business, execute them, because it's not very cool of you, comrade. You're messing up the bread industry. It's throwing everything out of whack. Here's the problem, though. The bread industry is messed up. People aren't getting bread. There's not enough to go around. Why? Let's focus on two main problems with communism. One is with the workers, and unfortunately, the workers often get the blame. Let's assume that everyone in the chain of command lies just 10%, just a little bit. So if a worker bakes 100 loaves of bread, that worker will lie and say they baked 110 loaves of bread. For more on how much people are willing to lie, see the interesting work of behavioral economist Dan Ariely. Okay, so most people will lie, cheat, and steal just a little bit to get ahead. Some people won't at all. Some people will take as much as they can get. Human flaws are a part of the problem. These flaws are accumulating errors that compound on each level. The second issue is just that this problem is hard. It's difficult for one centralized government to keep track of the ingredients, supply, demand, whether the bread is going bad. Do people even eat it when they get it? And how do you distribute the bread? You have to get it to where everyone needs the bread. Even if you have all the bread you need, delivering the bread efficiently to everyone is known in computer science as the traveling salesman problem, and it's very hard to compute. The big issue is that the central government has to decide for the whole nation. In communist Russia, during the Cold War, they had the smartest minds on teams trying to figure out the bread problem. How do you make, distribute, and sell all the bread? They had the smartest minds in the country working on this bread problem. The capitalist United States and Russia had little communication and understanding. When Russia finally did send diplomats to the United States, one of the first questions they asked was, "I would like to speak to your bread manager." Does that question even make sense to capitalists? How does bread get made under capitalism? The means of production are not owned by the government. People are free to start a bakery if they want to, and they can charge whatever price they want. The buyers are free to buy from whoever they want. The idea of sellers and buyers, supply and demand, forms the basis of the free market. Who decides the price for items? The free market decides. We all do. If people want bread and someone's willing to make it, then a bakery opens. If the demand is so high that a bakery sells all of their bread, then imagine what the baker thinks. If the baker sells all of their bread in the middle of the day, then what they can do is double the price. Some people will be willing to pay for it. Some people will want to go to another bakery. The baker is working the same amount, but is now doubling their income by increasing the price. In this way, businesses find an equilibrium on how much people are willing to buy, for what price, and how much items they have to sell. In this way, buyers and sellers are supposed to find an equilibrium. The sellers want to sell all of their items, and the buyers want a reasonable price that they're willing to pay. Capitalism is all about the most profit for the least work, the greatest return on the least investment, the most return for the least energy. Businesses like bakeries are in constant competition. If the demand for regular bread is met, a baker could try to expand by making garlic bread and charging more. If there's no demand for bread, you close down your bakery or you move somewhere where there is demand. For those who can't afford regular bread, there's crusty, less nutritious bread for less. So unlike communism, which tries to have the government process supply and demand and set prices, capitalism distributes the calculation of supply and demand to all the buyers and sellers. As producers and consumers, we're all doing a small part. The problem with capitalism is that we distribute the lying, the cheating, and the stealing. We're all hustling. We all have needs. Remember, we're trying to get the most return from the least work, which often means lying, stealing, and cheating. And some of us are better at that than others, which eventually leads to a massive inequality. Competition is still fierce and desperate at the top and bottom. People move to commodify and sell everything they can as inequality grows. Look, lots of people have way better critiques of communism and capitalism than I do. The point is, capitalism assumes that we're all greedy and self-interested and want more for less. I've talked to some economic majors, and there's one problem that they never seem to have an answer for. And if you do, please comment below. But what stops someone from outsourcing labor to another country? When we want the most return on investment, we'll go to those countries that have horrible labor laws. I'm talking about workers who work 16 plus hours a day, 6 days a week, and are in constant danger. And the answer is nothing stops anyone. Outsourcing often increases profits. Well, there's one thing that could stop this, which is that if consumers know that there's some horrible practice in the development of their products, then the consumer can choose not to buy that and buy from another producer who doesn't use slave labor or any other horrible human practice. But can we as consumers do that? A few of us can, but if you can do that, you're privileged. Most of us are just trying to get by. We don't have the time to sit down and investigate each company. Even if we do, this gives companies an incentive to hide bad labor practices so that more people will buy the product. It's also assuming we've got time to investigate each company and how the products are made. Even if we have the best labor laws in our own country, there's still problems abroad. Capitalism wants to exploit people. It wants to take more than is fair. It's the greatest return on the least investment. When there's no more to take from a place or a people, capitalism moves on. Because the process is distributed, lots of people don't even see it happening. So communism collapses under its own weight, but capitalism spreads out like a bomb. Capitalism grows and extracts what it can, person by person, place by place. Capitalism will only collapse when the environment collapses and can no longer support production. It takes way longer than communism to collapse, and it costs a whole planet. This is a part of why I think climate change is happening. We're taking everything we can from the environment as quickly as we can, due to capitalism. What we need is a combination of capitalism and communism that addresses human flaws and also computational limits. What we need is a combination of capitalism and communism that addresses the computational limits and human flaws. I'm arguing for distributed, centralized processing. We should have an AI core managing a local economy. As I've said in my video on the intentional AI community, I believe we should set a limit of communities of 10,000 people. Before we try to solve the world's economic problems, we should shrink the problem down to small, sustainable communities. We should have a clear list of human needs like water, shelter, food, electricity, etc., and algorithmically determine prices. We should use sensor data to know exactly how much of resources are being produced, used, and needed. This information can be freely available to all community members, so everyone knows how much there is. Having direct sensor data eliminates or reduces lying and mistakes. I hate to admit it, but Grimes figured it out. Grimes got it.
If implemented correctly, AI could actually theoretically solve for abundance. Like, we could totally get to a situation where nobody has to work, everybody is provided for with a comfortable state of being, comfortable living. AI could automate all the farming, weed out systematic corruption, thereby bringing us to as close as possible to genuine equality. So basically, everything that everybody loves about communism, but without the collective farm. Because let's be real, enforced farming is really not a vibe.
A project I find inspiring is called FarmBot, which automates the process of farming and growing food. The machine and software are open sourced, which means that you can download the schematics and build the machine out of spare parts. You can go online and download the operating system. You can also update it with different plants. The bot uses a camera to check on the food, water it, and also select it for harvesting. You can program in all kinds of new plants and cycles. With this sensor data connected to a central system, we can know how much food there is, when it will be ready, and what the price should be. Pricing can be determined by how much energy is used to grow and harvest the crop, as well as demand from community members. Think of a resource like water, which is essential and can be measured precisely. As we have less water, the price can automatically fluctuate, signaling to community members to conserve. Similarly, we can do this with electricity. As our batteries are fully charged and the outlook for power generation looks good, the price for electricity will remain low. Conservation can be impressed upon members by price, but it's also a signal of what work needs to be done. If we're running low on water and food, we know where work needs to be directed. Now let's talk about money. What even is money? If you really think about it, money is trust. Money is trust that this object, a dollar, will have value wherever you go in your society. Money doesn't inherently have value like bread has value, which you can eat. Money has value because we collectively believe it does. For more on the development of money over humanity's history, read Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. I've already discussed near-term collapse. I believe America and many other nations will fall, which will make their currencies worthless. What's the value of a dollar no one believes in and no one trusts? This is one of the reasons we should transition to a local currency. With a local cryptocurrency, we can manage money ourselves, and the value will be equal to the trust and meaning and investment in our community members. When the value of our national currency falls to zero, the value of our local cryptocurrency will remain intact. Cryptocurrency sounds complicated, but it's really just digital cash. There's a shared public ledger where you can see every dollar, called a coin, ever made. You can verify every transaction. As our community produces value, we can mine cryptocurrency, closely matching our community's real value. The local currency is yet another tie to the AI core to manage pricing. we can know how much money every community member has, so nothing necessary is priced out of range. The community crypto solves many of the cryptocurrency problems of today. Current coins are vulnerable to the 51% attack. If any one user owns more than 50% of the cryptocurrency, they can double pay. It's like spending $1 twice. That would break the system. We can track this so that no one member has too much of an unequal share. I saw this in a meme and it makes total sense, but we should just set a cap on income. If you make $1 billion, you should get an award and it says, "You won capitalism." That's it. And then you can't make more money. For the community, we should set some equivalent. I'd say $250,000. Once you get that much money, you won the game. Congratulations. Stop. No more money for you. If you earn money beyond that, it should go to the community pool of funds. This will help to distribute money equally and equitably among members. Part of the dream of cryptocurrency is that it will replace traditional money and be more sustainable. We could use electricity from renewable resources to power cryptocurrencies. This would replace all the paper, ink, other energy sources we need for traditional money. The problem is new coins are being made all the time, new cryptocurrencies are invented, and they're growing massively, in addition to the same old money we have. So it's not replacing old money, it's just causing more of a problem. It's using more energy, and it's contributing to climate change. It's only making climate change worse. We can solve this problem by limiting the growth of our cryptocurrency. Our community coin is only for community members. It is not open for public trade or investment. The coin will be powered sustainably from community sources. The coin will be generated by work and shared by trade. In this way, we can have a circular degrowth economy. Look, I don't know why we never learned this basic dichotomy of the economy. There is the financial economy and there's the material economy. It's tricky because the ideal is that they should be closely tracking each other, so they should have the same value. The material economy is the actual stuff we have. Think metal, plants, those kind of things. The financial economy is the value we place on those materials and how much money there is. The two can get very separate. For more on this, see Professor Sid Smith's lecture on how to enjoy the end of the world. Some examples of this separation are that after World War II, Germany had a lot of debts, and so they just started to print more money. The value of that money started to separate drastically, so much that people started to burn money instead of buying firewood. It was cheaper just to burn money than buy new wood. In ancient Rome, inflation was clear. They used to have pure gold coins. But when they needed to make more money than they had gold, they would mix that gold with other metals like copper. So as inflation rised, there was 90% gold and 10% copper in the coin, then 80%, then 50%, then 10%. That's inflation. That's when the material economy separates from the financial economy. And it is a major sign of collapse. Simply making more money detaches us from the real world. Of course, we will still need to interact with the nation around us, but there will be a layer of separation. The value our community generates in the traditional dollar will be held separately in a communal fund. We can exchange our cryptocurrency with the national currency, but we can't exchange the national currency with the cryptocurrency. So we can go out, but they can't come in. If you want something within the community, you use the coin. If you want something outside of the community, you use the coin, which goes to the community bank, which is then exchanged for the national currency. Part of the point is our cryptocurrency should be worthless to the outside world. The meaning and trust should come from community members. If we have a global exchange of currency, we end up in a global web of inequality. The richest people send their money to offshore bank accounts to avoid paying taxes. I think if anyone gets too wealthy, they should assume they'll do the same. Don't think you're that much better. We should just work to make this impossible, not an option. The hope is that if there are a federation of communities to trade with, we can barter directly with goods and services. By limiting our groups to 10,000, we solve many of the problems of communism and capitalism. We avoid the computational limit collapse of communism. We end the irrational belief of unlimited growth for capitalism. We focus on thriving within the scope of our environment and ecological flourishing. Like I said, I'm not an economist. I just want an economic system that is more moral. I want to minimize harm and maximize fairness. I say AInomics because I want to put AI in everything. How are we going to do this? AI. The details still need to be developed and will likely vary from community to community. I need your help. If these ideas interest you, please consider joining the Intentional AI community, where we can make this a reality.